Welcome to the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm your host, Robin L. Owens, PhD, and this is where we dive in each week to give advice, tools, and tips for high-achieving, purpose-minded women who've written nonfiction books and want to amplify their message beyond the book. I'm a college professor, and when I'm not doing that, I am speaking, coaching, mentoring, and teaching high-achieving women who have written books how to use their books to make a bigger difference, have more impact, and purpose. Okay, let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm so glad you're here and that you take time to listen into the podcast. Really appreciate you, and you help make us rank in the top 5 of all podcasts globally, according to the podcast search engine Listen Notes. So thank you for doing that. Really appreciate you. And today I'm talking with Denise Brosseau, and she is a speaker, executive coach, consultant, and author of the book, Ready to be a Thought Leader. And she is known as a thought leader about, get this, about thought leadership. I love that. So meta. Can't wait to hear more about it. She is also she co-founded the Forum for Women Entrepreneurs, later Watermark, and Springboard Enterprises. Together, these organizations have helped women founders of companies like Constant Contact, Canva, iRobot, and many others raise millions in capital to scale their businesses. Denise is a speaker and facilitator, and she has presented at many companies, conferences, and retreats across U.S. and internationally. And how I know her, she's the co-founder of the Authoress Community, an invite-only group of women authors who share tips on how to market their books. And when she's not doing all that, she is a textile artist who loves quilting and weaving. Welcome, Denise.
Thank you, Robin. So great to be here. So great to be with your listeners.
So glad to have you. Now, you heard me read some of I didn't read all of what you have here, but I read some of your bio or introduction. So now here's your opportunity for you to tell us in your own words about yourself and what you do.
My work is really the most fun ever. I work primarily with senior women leaders. I work with them on that journey from building a personal brand and getting known and standing out to becoming that recognized expert who's known for what they're known for, meaning their knowledge, their expertise, and then finally that final step to becoming a thought leader. And so that is the journey and the work. And it came about because I took my own accidental thought leader journey in the middle part of my career.
So tell us about this accidental thought leader journey then.
I don't think I had any idea I was on that journey when I was in the midst of it. I founded these 2 organizations, one of them here in the Valley called the Forum for Women Entrepreneurs. And I was working in tech and doing that sort of on the side with a group of friends. And finally, it kind of got too big and we had a lot of members joining every month, and finally realized, okay, I'm going to quit my day job, best day of my life, and move over to running this organization full time. And over the next 5 years, running the organization, growing it to 7 cities, helping start the Springboard Venture Conference, I became really one of 3 or 4 people in the United States who were very versed in this world of women and venture capital. So this idea that women should have access to venture for the first time, and became kind of this it girl. I get constant invitations to come and speak and to do media and to, television, all kinds of stuff, and travel internationally. I got a lot of opportunities. And I look back at that time and think, it was super fun, but I had no strategy. I had no plan. My message was kind of all over the place. I mean, I wanted more access to capital, but anyway, I think of it all as a bit catch as catch can, just jumping at everything that happened. And by the way, trying to run an organization and grow it to 7 cities and help a lot of women get venture funding. But if I look back, really the journey was not thought through. If I had even half the knowledge I have today about what I could have done, I could have been amazing. So that's why I call myself an accidental thought leader.
But it was still amazing, even in the midst of that. So now tell us about thought leader about thought leadership. Say a little more about that.
So what happened was, fast forward, I left the organization and did a few other things. And one day I got a phone call from a friend, and she said, so, Denise, how you were that thought leader in women's entrepreneurship? She said, I want to do that. And honestly, Robin, that was by far the first and only time anybody had ever called me a thought leader. It never had occurred to me that was what I was doing. I was just taking the opportunities that were presented, and I was, forging a path to helping women change the world here. But that really got me to reflect. And over the next couple of years, I worked with her from being completely invisible in her field to becoming that recognized expert, being invited to testify in front of the US Senate, being recognized by the White House, being headhunted by the governor to lead a statewide initiative in her field. And I thought, okay, this is what happens when you have a strategy and you have a plan and you are thoughtful about the opportunities you position yourself for and that you say yes to. That got me so jazzed and so excited about the possibilities of women as change agents. Women is taking that seat at the table. Women is getting their voice heard and honestly being taken seriously because they are building the coalitions they need, understanding stakeholder management, thinking through the message, all of the stuff that I did by accident, if I did it at all. What if you could do this strategically? And that became my work. So it became the book, it became all the things that have happened since, because at that point, it was really clear to me that this was a set of skills that nobody taught me in college, in grad school. It's not something I might have read a book about, maybe being an activist, but it's kind of different. And I wanted women to understand what this journey was and how this type of knowledge and expertise and stick-to-itiveness and building that flywheel effect can change their career trajectory. It can change the difference that they make in the world, and it can get them that seat at the table that they best deserve.
Yes. Now you say, you kind of say like you sort of stumbled into it, but I'm guessing there was more to it. Now let's think about little Denise. Now, are there any connections with little Denise and the skills and abilities and things you were doing as little Denise with this now stumbling upon thought leadership for thought?
Yes, of course. There was, the good news was, and why I was an accidental thought leader is I didn't come to it completely naively. I started my career in the tech industry, and one of the roles that I played there was I went out and I presented software at various software shows all over town. And my boss pretty much figured out in my first real tech job, he's like, if I send Denise out once a month to go talk to users and customers and show off our software, she comes back a happier, more productive, and a member of our team. And I came back with a ton of ideas and I was excited about this is what our customers want. Like that lit me up. So I had already been a speaker. I already understood what it meant to share ideas, even though they weren't my ideas, but I loved our software and I was out, kibitzing with anybody. I'm definitely an extrovert. I love to speak. I'm not in the least bit afraid of an audience. So I think all of those things helped me. I think the second thing that helped me is that I had a cause. I am definitely purpose and cause driven. That's what I know. Love the name of your podcast, Robbie. I am purpose driven. That's what gets me out of bed in the morning. And the work that I've chosen to do in my life has been around purpose driven people. So I had a whole community within my nonprofit that were very purpose driven. All of them were volunteers except me for the longest time, and so I think those things were part of, and I'm a Wellesley woman, so I believe in women's education. I believe in women's communities. I've built women's communities. So I think those, again, there were some skills, there was some background, and there was some personality traits that helped me, no question. But what I didn't have was really an understanding of how you weave those kinds of things together in order to make change. And how you are effective in crafting both a message and a coalition so that you're not one-offing things and not stumbling about when somebody sticks a microphone in your face. Like you look for that microphone because you have something to say and you know what to say in that moment. That's the stuff I didn't really know.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when you were a little girl, were you a speaker like that? Were you outgoing and still, yeah?
Oh yeah. I have to laugh. My sister would tell you, my sister was 2 years ahead of me at Wellesley, and I showed up on campus, and within a very few weeks, if not, maybe a month or two, people would go to her and say, "Oh, so you're Denise's sister." And she's like, "No, she is my sister." Well, my sister is brilliant, but she spent all her time in the science lab, right? So nobody knew her. But I was a student guide, guiding tours. I worked in the admissions office. I was making friends. And my father always said I majored in extracurricular activities at Wellesley College, even though I was a Russian studies major. But I definitely am the outgoing one of the family. I'm definitely the one who was raising money for the Girl Scouts and selling more cookies and everything. Yeah. So yeah, this apple didn't fall far from its tree in any way. I've been this girl my whole life.
Yeah, because raising money even at a young age too. Yeah, I see that. I'm seeing how you connect the dots there. So tell us was there a moment or like a catalyst that you said, well, now let me write this book. Let me put this in a book that's ready to be a thought leader, ? That book. What was the impetus?
The impetus was actually an email that arrived in my mailbox from a woman at Wiley Press who wrote me this note one day and said, "Have you ever thought about writing a book?" And the email came as a result of me doing a good deed for someone. I had been introduced through the nonprofit that I had worked with previously to someone who was writing an article for Fast Company about women entrepreneurs. And I had spent, 2 hours with this woman telling her all about the whole lay of the land of women's entrepreneurship, the journey, the history, I'd kind of given her. So she had thanked me in her very good article that she wrote in Fast Company. She put a little box at the end to thank the 2 or 3 of us that had really helped her. The woman at Wiley saw that and she Googled me and she emailed me and said, "Have you ever thought about writing a book?" And that honestly was the impetus because, I'd had an opportunity when I was running the Forum for Women Entrepreneurs to write a book, but it was at the end of my time there after 10 years. And I was so tired and so burned out and the economy was a mess. And I just walked away from that possibility back then. And I'd always regretted it. And I'd always thought, but that would have been a very different book. So then when I sat down with her, we had coffee in San Francisco and I brought sort of 3 ideas. The first one was the book I'd never written, which was about sort of women's entrepreneurship. The second one was this idea to write the book about thought leadership. And the third one, I don't even remember, but she fell in love with this second one. And the reason I'm convinced is, well, first of all, she said, women's entrepreneurship books never sell. I'm like, okay, well, thank you for telling me that. She said, you need a book that's going to appeal to a much broader audience. Thought leadership is for everybody. It was really early in the world of thought leadership, not that many, that was hardly anything written about it. And third, I had done something strategic, again, by accident. I had been teaching this every year. I would teach a workshop at this one conference that my friend ran. And I had taught a workshop on thought leadership. And afterwards, I had a tape of it. It's like a 2-hour workshop. And I had a friend of mine listen to it. And I hired her to do one of those visual storytelling things. You know what I'm talking about, right? So she did this cool visual story of the workshop and my journey of thought leadership. And she turned it into this sort of handheld thing that 8.5 by 11. And I took it with me to the meeting. And I said, this is kind of what I want to talk about. And it was cool looking. I mean, I could never do that, but it made me look way cooler than I am. And so I put this in front of the woman. She's like, "That's the book." Like, that's the book. So that really is the moment. I mean, it was a combination of things like everything, but it was that catalyst. And so she took a year with me to kind of write the proposal and pitch it internally and get me the contract. And, it was a lot of pain and suffering that went in there, which we always let it glom right over. But anyway, I don't regret it for a minute.
So tell us the premise of the book.
The premise of the book is, it's a guidebook for my younger self. When I really think about that woman in her, I was in my mid-30s when I started the Forum for Women Entrepreneurs with my friends from business school. And I had no idea what we were doing. We were determined to change the statistics of less than 1% of the venture money going to women. If I was kind of writing to that younger woman thinking, what if she had known then what I know now? So I wrote the guidebook that I would have wished somebody would have handed me when I started that nonprofit to say, if you really are going to change that number, if you are going to truly make a difference in this arena, you got to be playing a much different game than just showing up and running a nonprofit every day. And that is the conversation that I want to have with people. So that's the book I wrote. I want people to understand that there's a meta conversation happening. If you're really trying to make change, it is not about the one by one work that you're doing every day, which most for-profit and nonprofit leaders are thinking is the work. They're thinking per customer or per employee or per person that they're serving. But I always want to say, what's the bigger change you're trying to bring about? And could we think at that level? And could we step by step be putting in place the elements that are necessary to be part of a broader group of people that are making change? So that's what this book is. It's that journey from leader to thought leader.
Oh, I see. Wow. Wow. I'm thinking people right now, like, I got to get that book, but we can talk more about how they can get that later. All right.
Thank you.
So now we're talking about how the book came to be. So now let's talk about your author self, right? Let's talk about your role as an author, because I'm guessing the women who are listening to the podcast are what I call high achieving women, ambitious, goal oriented, good at a few things, responsible in their professional lives, responsible in their personal lives. People come to them, ask them questions. And then on top of all that, they've written at least one book. So this is who we're talking to. This is who you and I are talking to. All right. So from your author role, what would you say is, as an author, something that helped you get your message, and I'm calling your book your message, help get your message into the hands of readers or just out into the world?
I think it was the opportunity to create 2 LinkedIn learning courses. That probably broadened the reach of my book in a way that I myself it would have been hard pressed for me to do that by myself. So the book came out, lots of golden magic happened. And in that time, someone from Wiley was shutting down their West Coast offices. Somebody from Wiley was leaving. And one of my friends introduced me and said, "Hey, Denise, will you talk to this woman? I know Wiley published you. She's leaving. She'd love some advice." So I always say yes. So I said yes. And I gave her an hour or two of free coaching. And fast forward a few years later, she became the head of LinkedIn Learning. And she called me up one day and she said, "Hey, you remember me? We connected, blah, blah, blah. I'm running LinkedIn Learning. We really would like to do a course on thought leadership. And we thought of you." I'm like, "Yes, I can do that." And that course, I mean, it's a couple of years old now. My book came out in January of 2015. So it's been a couple of years. I think the course came out in 2018, and then they asked me to do a second course in 2019 on organizational thought leadership. Those 2 courses continue to A, bring me money every month, but B, they connect me to people around the globe who've taken, I see little notes in my LinkedIn pretty much every day. "Oh, I just completed the course, organizational thought leadership. I just completed the course, becoming a thought leader." I'm like, okay, that's so cool. They're in Saudi Arabia and Oman and Belarus. Like, I would not be in Belarus selling that course. Or book. So that's what I think is the magic. And in the course is a bunch of downloadable worksheets. And then will drive people. I don't get a ton of clients out of it, but for me, it's trying to get these ideas out, trying to help people think in a different way and make change in their own countries, their own communities, their own organizations. I'll sign up for that any day of the week, Robin.
Yes.
That's
wow.
amazing.
That is amazing. An opportunity to make impact all around the world. That is truly amazing. Wow.
Yes.
Good for you. Congratulations for that. Because you're really making a difference. All right. So we're still talking to this woman that I described. So what would you say, if any, is a challenge in getting your message out into the world?
Wow. I think it's letting go of the to-do list and thinking bigger. That, I think, is about courage. It's about believing that we have a greater meaning, purpose, legacy on this planet. It is about letting go of what one of my clients calls the itty bitty shitty committee in our brain that tells us that we're either not good enough or don't deserve or whatever it is, all that internal stuff. So it's doing the internal work. It's believing in the bigger story and the bigger message. And then it is letting go of all that crap that we've said yes to that doesn't matter. Like, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say this, but do we need to drive the carpool 5 days a week? Isn't there someone else who can do that? Whatever it is, like looking at our stuff that's on our to-do list that makes us feel good because everybody's patting us on the back and think, okay, but what am I not doing as a result of saying yes to one more set of cupcakes or one more piece of scut work at our day job? What are we not saying yes to as a result? And so I think that's the thing. Even women authors, there's so many of us who, when was the last time we told people that we wrote a book? When was the last time we went out and marketed the book? Even 6 months after it's written, many people have moved on, or they think, I don't know what we think, that we think there's some magic marketing fairy that's going to come and market our book for us. So I think it's part of it is realizing that the way we have impact is we got to do some work. We got to, do the heavy lifting. And some of it starts right here between the ears, like believing that what we wrote matters and is so needed by people in the world.
Yeah. But I do like the idea of a marketing fairy. I like that.
Can I get one of those?
You find one of those? Are they?
I'll share mine if I find it, Robin. I really will. But I look back. I had this weird moment. I don't know, maybe a year after the book came out. I got this random message, entirely random. This woman writes and she says, "Dear Denise, I was staying in someone's home and I was in the guest room, and on the bookshelf was your book, and couldn't sleep, and I took it down and I read it, and I asked my friend if I could take it home, and I underlined half the book, and it changed my life." I'm like, okay, wow. Now I know I got up. That's why I did the work that I did, like that. So, yes, we can't know what the magic is that's going to happen for us. But those kind of emails, those kind of moments when people say that is the best thing you can say to me is I underlined and highlighted and sticky noted your book. Doesn't that make you happy? I love that moment. That's what I wrote it for.
That's awesome. Wow.
Some random guest room in Australia.
Guest room in Australia. I love that. I absolutely love that. Wow. All right. We talked about this a little bit, some implied it, but is there a part of you that is reflected in your book?
Yeah, my story. Even from that very first page of my story, I talk about that phone call that I got from the woman that I mentioned, who was my first thought leadership client, and why it drove me to take on other women as thought leaders on that thought leader journey. Why, what happened for her, I wrote this book to tell stories. And what compelled me when I was in all of the morass of trying to get the darn book done was those stories. It was telling the stories of women thought leaders, whether they were clients, whether they were someone I knew, whether they were someone I just reached out to because I thought they were inspiring. And, I have some male stories too, but many of them, the ones that really inspire me are the stories of women leaders who stepped onto a much bigger stage and into a much bigger role. That is the stories that need to be told. Most of them are still, even after playing on a bigger stage, are still overlooked and unknown. And I wanted to tell those stories.
Yeah. Good for you. All right. So you mentioned this before, and we know that the podcast is Leadership Purpose. And you talked about this. And so I asked everybody this question. Here's your opportunity to say more about it. But you sort of answered it already. I asked people, is purpose important? It's important to have purpose in your work for you, or at least a sense of purpose. Why and why not? So you said yes, but tell us a little bit more about why that is.
I've changed jobs a lot in my career. I've worked in big companies, small companies, startups, nonprofits, for-profits. I've started my own many times. And the ones that I stick with, the ones that most mattered to me were the ones that mattered to the world, meaning that they had some purpose bigger than myself. I shipped a lot of software out the door in the first 10 years of my career. Say a few of those products probably mattered to people, but some of them maybe not so much, right? The ones that people would come up to me at these user groups that I would go demo at and say, oh my God, I love blah, blah, blah product. That's what made me happy. Like, I want to see people light up. I want to feel like I had this phrase in the book that I talk about thought leadership as being like a series of sparks or small campfires that over time you see more and more and more of them across a countryside or across a world, and you start to see the change that's happening. Now, obviously, I don't want forest fires, but I do want people lighting up, and I do want change to be happening for the good. So whether it's my personal life working on abortion rights issues, whether it's the work that I do with women leaders, I want to be sparking more of the change that needs to happen in the world. And those are the jobs, those are the times when I was most satisfied and most lit up.
Yeah. Those jobs are the most meaningful, it sounds like. Well, Denise, you have given us so much already. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that comes to mind that you want to share before we tell people how they can get in touch with you? If not, okay, but just something you want to say.
I love that you're doing this, Robin. I think that is what I want to say at the closing piece. That, one of the things that I love is when I can see women out getting their voice heard, bringing forward other cool women to share their voice. So thank you is the first thing I want to say. And secondly, a shout out to your listeners, because so much of the transformation that's happened in my life has been because I've been willing to listen to other inspiring people, to learn from their experiences, to keep pushing myself to be learning and being on a learning journey. So keep going. There's 132 episodes, you said. I hope they're listening to all of them. And I want to just shout out as well to all the amazing women authors, because I know how hard it was to write that book. I do know. My mentor used to say, you need bum glue to glue your bum to the chair to get that book written. So I'm wishing you all a lot of bum glue for those who want to write another book. And those two things.
Well, thank you. Thank you. That's very generous of you. I appreciate your kind words to me too. All right. So I'm imagining people are saying, I got to get this book, or I got to hear more about this. Where can they be in touch with you?
So Ready to be a Thought Leader is available, of course, in all the natural places. But my website is thoughtleadershiplab.com. And you can find me, of course, on LinkedIn. And I really want to invite women who are doing that transformational work in the world, who are ready to step onto the larger stage, to drop me a note on LinkedIn. And let's set up a 30-minute call to talk about your journey from leader to thought leader, whether it's through your book or through other work that you're doing in your community and in your organization, with your family, whatever the work is. Those are the kind of folks that I love to see how I can help.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Denise, thank you so much. You've been generous with your time. I know you're doing lots of things, especially these days. So I really appreciate you for taking time out and sharing with our audience this way.
Thank you, Robin. It's great to be in conversation.
All right. Okay, everyone. And I would love to hear from you. Drop me a line over at LinkedIn. Just go and just give me a message at Robin L. Owens, PhD, at Robin L. Owens, PhD. I'd love to hear your thoughts about the episode or the podcast in general. And if you're an author and you're thinking about how to expand your message beyond the book, and you've been thinking about creating a course, head on over to createmasterfulcourses.com, createmasterfulcourses.com, and I can help you there. And until next time, this is Dr. Robin. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. If you enjoyed it, head on over and rate and subscribe so you never miss an episode. New episodes drop every week, and I can't wait to hang out with you again soon. Meanwhile, this is Dr. Robin signing off. See you next time.